These are the 4 accounts every girl needs in her 20s and 30s so she can be rich and wealthy in her 50s and 60s. Once you start stalking with the big dogs, you need to get you a Roth IRA account. Even if you're only investing $20 a week or $20 a month, that adds up. I just maxed out my Roth IRA for 2025, which is something I really regret not doing more in my 20s, but if you continue to max out your Roth IRA throughout the years, you will be a multi-millionaire. Now, everybody talks about high yield savings account, high yield savings account. Yes, you absolutely need one. And this is how much I made from having a high yield savings account over the past 6 months. Do not keep your savings in a regular savings account. Now, I do have 2 checking accounts, one with the credit union and one with Chime. I have my corporate 9-to-5 paychecks and all of my brand deals deposited there, and then I just use those to pay off my credit cards. And if you have a 9-to-5, I definitely recommend investing in your 401k. Even if it's $20 a paycheck, that adds up. When I was making $40,000, I was investing in my 401k, and that ended up being $5,000. So girl, I'm trying to be in a mink coat on somebody's yacht. Rich aunties tap in.
As of May, I've currently made $72,000. Let's talk about it. And at the end of the year, I'm still projected to get a refund check. So every 2 weeks, my gross income is $5,338. I make sure that I contribute to a lot of different accounts, even before I am taxed, to bring down my taxable income. So the first thing that I contribute to is my dependent care, prepaying for my baby's expenses, daycare, etc., before I get my check. That way I can repay myself each month or at the end of the year. And that is $250 each check or $500 a month. Next is my health savings account, or HSA. You can only use this account for healthcare related expenses. You can use the money now or later. It's pretty much like a debit card where you just put money in and spend it as needed. And I put $50 every 2 weeks or $100 a month. Next is my 401k. Everybody kind of knows what this is. It's just a retirement account. And with this account, I put in roughly $300 every 2 weeks or $600 a month. I not only put money into this account, but I make sure that the money is invested across multiple different stocks or investments to continue to further grow the money. The last thing is actually post-tax, but I still do think that this is something great to contribute to every 2 weeks, which is a Roth IRA. It's pretty much a retirement account as well, and I put $100 every 2 weeks or $200 a month. And that's a big reason why I do get a refund check at the end of the year.
People talk about the FIRE movement like it's just one thing, and I'm sick of it. Okay, because not everybody can retire rich at 35, but there are obtainable ways to reach financial independence that people don't talk about. FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early, and it basically means having enough money invested that work becomes optional. But the way people get there and what their lives look like after vary differently, so here are the 4 types of FIRE that you should know about. The first type gets slept on a lot, but it's lean FIRE. This is the more minimalistic version of financial independence, and people pursuing lean FIRE tend to keep their expenses very low both before and after retirement so they can reach financial independence earlier. Because this lifestyle costs less, the amount needed to be invested is also much lower. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have fat FIRE. This is still early retirement, but with a much larger investment portfolio so you can maintain a higher standard of living. People pursuing fat FIRE usually want enough invested so that they can travel regularly, dine out, and spend without feeling restricted. Then we have barista FIRE, which is kind of a hybrid of the first 2. This is when you reach partial financial independence and then work a low stress or part-time job to cover certain expenses or benefits like health insurance. Your investments cover part of your life and then your job fills in the rest. And last but not least, my personal favorite FIRE type is Coast FIRE, in theory. This is when you front-loaded your investments early on in life, so much so that if you never contributed another dollar, your investments would grow to your FIRE number at your desired age. So instead of aggressively investing every year, you can ease back a little bit and let your investments coast. And honestly, most people, myself included, who's on track to becoming a millionaire in their 30s, fall somewhere between these strategies. And guess what? That's fine, because financial independence isn't just about quitting your job at 35. It's about building up enough wealth so that you have options.
How did I do it? How did I retire at 48 years old? I'm going to make this as brief as I can because I have a very long video that is not brief. You can go watch that. I got started when I was 42 years old. Before that, I had no savings. I retired at 48. In that time, for 5 years, I had a 6-figure income. Only 5 years. I also had RSUs as a part of my compensation plan. So stocks in my company as a part of my compensation plan at work. That was key. Now don't be mistaken, just because I had RSUs doesn't mean that's the only way I got there. Not true. I had to use my own income. I had to become an expert in my financial life and figure it out. And that's what I did. Right before I decided to focus on financial independence, I bought the home that I'm standing in now. What I did first was I paid off the $5,000 in credit card debt that I had after I left my marriage. Then I paid off the $15,000 used car that I had purchased. Then I paid off the $75,000 in student loan debt. I have a master's degree. Then I didn't have any more debt, so I decided to do what? Pay off my house. I paid off this house in 3 years. Sometime during the course of this debt payoff, I started my 401k and started investing there. And once my house was paid off and I was debt-free, I started investing 50% of my gross income. 50%. That 50% though, I maxed out my 401k to the IRS max contribution limits. My company allowed that. So in some of those years, I can't really remember, but I remember it starting at around $58,000. I put $58,000 or whatever the max was into my 401k. After that, I maxed out my IRA, whatever it was back then, probably $5,500 or something. Then, because I was running out of places to store my money, I started using the HSA healthcare plan at work. The HSA allowed me to save an additional $5,000 or so because my employer contributed some, and there's a max amount that you can contribute to an HSA. So that was maxed out. So then when my 401k, my IRA, and my HSA were maxed out and I still had money left to save, I opened a brokerage account. The brokerage account was instrumental to my early retirement because you need to be 59 and a half to access your IRA and your 401k without penalty. So the brokerage account you can access at any time. So I knew that I needed to save a big amount there in order to bridge me from early retirement to 59 and a half. So the short answer and how I did it was I paid off my debts, all of them, including my house. I started saving money. And then I retired 5 to 6 years later. Not everyone has a 6-figure income. Not everyone has RSUs as a part of their compensation plan at a fintech organization. I recognize that. This is my story, and this is how I did it. Do I think that you can do it on a much less income? Absolutely. You might have to start earlier. You may have to be more intentional. But do I think you can do it? Absolutely. You can do it. If early retirement, or even retirement for that matter, is your goal, the key is to get started. Just get started. Nothing will ever happen if nothing ever happens. You have to set your goal and you have to be intentional. And if you put those things together, you too can make it happen.
I've had a lot of comments on my videos about retirement. This is how I did it. I started tracking my spending and looking at anywhere that I could tweak it, anywhere that I could make changes on things that I didn't need to be spending money on. I set my retirement budget. I started practicing living on it to see if I could really do it. And then I started tucking away one entire paycheck every single month, because once I started tracking my spending and tweaking it, I had that much money left over just to put into my savings. I estimated until about 88 years old. People in my family don't really live that long, but I did it anyway to make sure that I had enough money. And I included my savings. I included any income that I was going to have after I quit working. And I also included Social Security that I knew I was going to get based on the ssa.gov Social Security website. So you can actually track that and see what you're going to get based on when you want to retire, whether it's 62, 67, 70. And when I started doing that, it gave me the confidence I needed to know that I could go ahead and quit, that I could write it out until I could draw Social Security, and that I actually would have even more money once I started drawing my Social Security, because I knew I was already living on half that much now. So that's how I did it. Let me know if you're retired, how you figured out how much you were going to need.
Here's my retirement budget breakdown. One of the first steps to retirement planning is figuring out how much money you actually need to spend each year, so here's mine. I base my numbers on my current expenses and what I envision my lifestyle to be in retirement. So starting with monthly expenses, rent, $2,000. This is quite a bit higher than my current rent of $1,400, but I wanted to build in a buffer in case I move to a higher cost of living city or end up buying a house. Electric, $250. Car gas, $40. This would probably be more like general transportation costs, public transit, maybe charging an electric vehicle. Groceries, $500, restaurants, $250. I can definitely see myself going out more in retirement, especially if we move to a larger city. Coffee, $100, fund money, $300, personal care, $200, pet, $150, subscriptions, $50. Now onto sinking funds, travel, $500. I think combined with points, this will be more than enough. Health, $1,000. This is for insurance and setting aside money for future healthcare costs. Healthcare in retirement is one of our largest expenses, so it's important to plan for it. Pet emergency, $50. This is for pet insurance. Gifts, $200 for birthdays, weddings, holidays. Home, $500. This would be for anything home related like furniture, home maintenance if we own a home. Car insurance and taxes, $250, just through a random number. Vet visits, $50. And my for funsies fund, $500. This is where I save for larger ticket items and also to cover any excess fund spending I have throughout the month. Multiply by 12, that brings my annual expenses to $82,680. Now when calculating my financial independence number, Coastfire, all of that, I just rounded up to $100,000, factoring in taxes and anything I might have forgotten about. Now, people do get really worried about taxes in retirement. This is why I like to make sure I have money in different buckets. So pre-tax, like a 401k, post-tax, Roth IRA, and also a taxable brokerage account. And that just gives you more flexibility and ways to get creative on how you pull that money out to minimize your tax burden. I will definitely be working with a tax professional when I get closer to retirement because it is very overwhelming and confusing, and I just want someone to tell me what to do. It's also important to revisit your retirement budget throughout the years to make sure it still fits your needs. Plus, I just think it's a good exercise to get you thinking about all the possibilities you have in retirement and the way that you want to live.
So listen, I retired at the end of 2022 at the age of 58, and I wanted to share a few financial mistakes that I avoided along the way. First one is living without a budget. Even when I was young and broke, I had a budget, a written budget, one that included expenses versus income. Because one of the ways you can avoid wasteful spending is to live within reality. And listen, a caveat to that is I knew when it was time to do something to increase my income. Because if you sit down and you write out a budget and more is going out than what's coming in, there's only one solution, and that is to find a way to bring in more money. That might mean finding a trade, increasing your skills, going back to school, but something has to be done to fill in that gap. The second mistake I avoided is when I did increase my income is to not go out and buy lavish items and live outside of my means. Resisting the urge to overinflate your lifestyle with every income increase is the fastest way to financial freedom. Smart thing to do is to use those increases towards an increased savings rate. The third mistake that I avoided was co-signing loans for other people. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is to take on somebody else's financial risk. It puts your own credit at risk and can set you back financially for years. I would never do that. Now, the fourth mistake I had to learn the hard way. I was 30, divorced with 2 kids, and did not have an emergency fund. When the transmission went out in my car, I found myself in a crisis and had to rely on other people to get me through it. From that point on, I built an emergency fund and never looked back. Think of an emergency fund as a shock absorber for crisis. And the last mistake I avoided was holding on to high interest credit card balances. That's a silent way of keeping you in financial debt, particularly as you get older and you want to retire, because you want to retire with little to no debt under your belt. That way you can take the shock of any kind of inflation changes. Now, I retired with a pension, but whether you retire with a pension, investments, a 401k, savings, every financial decision that you make along the way will count. Trust and believe it will. All right, love y'all. Bye.
$3,500 a month in order to be able to retire at the age of 67 with
$3,500 a month is a giant scary number. Let's talk about how to get it lower. Wait, hi, I'm Sam. I have a degree in finance. I also have ADHD. I help people with brains kind of like mine learn how to manage their money. Also a first-gen college grad, and I majored in finance because I was raised with zero financial literacy. Okay, the numbers I'm going to be talking about are going to be based on the numbers you mentioned. So a current age of 33, a goal of retiring at 67 for $1.3 million. First thing, you cannot save your way to retirement. You're going to have to invest. That knocks that $3,500 a month down to about $780 a month. I know that's not nothing. Let's talk about how I got there. You know, when you're talking about investing, you're just going to be putting your money into an S&P 500 index fund. S&P 500 over the last 50 years has had a return of about 11% or just over 11%. We have to account for inflation, so I knocked that down to 7. If you put about $780 into an index fund at a return of 7% until age 67, you will be at $1.3 million. And listen, I've been homeless. I have lived on food stamps. I know that $780 a month is not nothing. But keep in mind that is pre-tax. Notice on your page that you detail cars. My middle son does that too, and last year he cleared right around $50,000. Although he did have to help deliver a baby on the job, and I don't know if he got a bonus for that. Anyhow, I'm assuming a similar earning rate for you, so that puts your savings rate at about 20%. Again, I know that's not nothing. That percent is going to drop a lot as you start to earn more. Even if you can't do that full amount right now, it is so important to start doing something. Your best friend when it comes to investing is going to be time, because you need compound interest. Think about compound interest as snow, right? At first it starts to fall, it barely covers the ground, right? It's like barely existent. But then as more starts to come down, it starts to stick together, it starts to pile up really fast. That's how compound interest works. It takes time for it to pile up. The sooner you can get that base layer of flurries started, the more time you're gonna have for that snowbake to build and get bigger and bigger. So hopefully that makes it a little less scary.
Okay, I just got out of the shower, but this kind of question, I have to answer it. I can't let this slide. This is like what I'm all about here, okay? So the thing about not being financially literate is when you think about the fact that you're supposed to save, as an average American, $1 to $2 million for your retirement, just as an average American, that's the expectation. And you're like, well, I can fucking save that. That's how I used to think, but then I realized that the basis for the U.S. retirement system is the stock market, and the stock market, on average, over a long period of time, goes up 10% per year. So you don't have to actually save $1 million to $2 million to get $1 million to $2 million to retire. You just utilize those stock market retirement plans. Like my dogs are playing behind me. That's cute. And I made a spreadsheet to work this out, so hold on, I'll show you. So if you started at age 18 and you invested $100 every single month into a retirement plan, and it got the average return that most retirement plans utilizing the stock market get, 10% on average per year. If you did this until you were 65 years old, by the age of 65, you would have like $1.2 million, right? But you wouldn't have saved $1.2 million. It would have become that because of the appreciation of the stock market. But it only would have cost you $57,600 in savings, okay? That's how that works. So this is how much you actually would have put in to get at that $1.2 million. Now, the key to retirement investing because of this is the length of time, because the longer it sits in that, the bigger it gets, right? And I'm kind of fucked because I didn't learn anything about financial literacy until like my 30s, right? So then by the time I did, I cleared out my retirement accounts to use as a down payment to buy my first house. So now I'm kind of starting over. So like I'm 37 years old right now. So for me to have, at least I'm going low end, right? $1 million saved for my retirement. Here's how much I would have to save every month. $600 a month, more or less. And by 65, starting at my age 37, I'd have $1.1 million to retire, which is low, but I could do it. I do save a significant portion of my income now that I am officially middle class in Los Angeles where I live. I save $1,500 a month usually, but yeah, I only put around $600 of it into retirement accounts. The rest goes into like emergency savings, just in case. So yeah, it is fucked up that our country does not just provide for people in their old age. Like, it is absolutely wild that we have to take this on ourselves. And furthermore, even more wild that most Americans are not taught that this is how this works. But for many people, not for everybody, for many people, it is doable, especially if you start earlier. The earlier you start, the less you have to put in every single month. So that's why I always wish I had a time machine so I could go back in time and meet 18-year-old Madeline and be like, hey, just put $100 a month into one of these accounts. I know you're broke, but like, what's $100 more broke? You're so broke. Just do it. And I think I would have figured it out. You know, it would have been really hard. It's still really hard. Everything's really hard because capitalism is a shit show. But I think maybe I would have figured it out.
I'm putting $400 a month in my 401k. With my company match, I'll be all set for retirement. Smart sister, I'll do the same thing. Sis, it's retirement time. We both have over $2.7 million in our 401ks. Wait, I only have $200,000 in my account and I put away the same amount each month. How do you have over $2 million in yours? I invested mine in a low-cost index fund with an annual rate of return of 8%. Didn't you invest your money? No. A 401k is just the account. You have to invest the money for it to compound over time. How did you learn this? I follow Law Mother, and you should too. And don't worry, sis, I got a 2-bedroom condo, so you can come stay with me.